Hey YouTube, it's Brother Mark here. I hope you're well and good. I'm here in Ireland today. Flew in this morning and I'm here overnight. It's for work, as is the case with other videos I've recorded. No time to be a tourist, no time to enjoy, really, to be honest with you, just work. And so I just wanted to show you that I am actually here as well. It's just something that I like to do at the moment, so you can see what I'm talking about. So just a street down here, tram line there. This is Harcourt Street. That building over there is actually where the office is that I work in. So you can search for this, Harcourt Street in Dublin, and it's a nice place, but it's a lot more like the UK than I thought it would be, and which surprised me a bit. They use the same plug sockets here and so on. But that's not what I wanted to talk about. I mean, I'm just here in Ireland, and but I wanted to talk about something I heard about a couple of days ago, and I don't want to get too off the beaten track with it, but really just raise it as a point, because there's this former Olympian, at least I think she's a former Olympian. Her name is Sharon Davies, here in the UK, and a couple of days ago she posted a tweet that was essentially talking about male and female, and just stating really just biological fact that the lost should know as well as any Christian does. I mean, as you grow up as a child, I mean, you understand that there are men and there are women, there are boys and there are girls, right? Male, female. It's just a standard fact that you understand and accept and just implicitly know. And when you read the tweets that she put out, and you read it and you go, well, yeah, obviously you don't ever get to the point where you're questioning it in some way. And what I find just incredible is that she has been branded a transphobic, a homophobic, and sexist. After making these pretty standard, basic, kind of entry-level knowledge statements about physiology, science, right, biology. And it's just incredible. You've got people that are calling for her to be stripped of her MBE, which is one of the awards you can get here in the UK. And again, all this kind of funny kind of name calling and talking that goes on, and it's just this playing on words. But ultimately, it's really just the end goal is to justify sin. And we're now at the stage, brethren, where you go back 20, 30 years, this kind of thing would have been a given. And that's what I mean. It's a given, but nowadays it's considered hate speech to be talking like this, to be saying these kinds of statements. And, even myself, you have to be careful what you say, because, it's funny. Nowadays, we in the West, supposedly we have a democracy, we have free speech. But the truth is, we don't. It's only free if you follow a very specific, very liberal party line. And to those that don't, and don't follow kind of what it is being set out to be, then there's a problem with you. So this is the thing that I object to, that you can't express that opinion. You can't express what you know to be true. And I mean, you see that, for example, in the very first chapter in Genesis, right? Verse 27, so God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him. Male and female created he them. See? And you see that throughout the scripture. Male, female. It's pretty straightforward. And the basics kind of, about procreation, about marriage, about all of these things, it is between a man and a woman. And what's been happening over the last, you could probably trace it back 50, 70 years or so on, is this gradual breakdown and assault on things like the traditional, in other words, the normal marriage, the family unit, education. All of these kind of things have been slowly torn down. And now what we have is just this pile of sin, to be honest with you, and that's all it is. And it's infectious and it's corrupting. And I'm not surprised at all to see someone, as far as I know, by the way, who is lost, making these kinds of statements, because a lot of people know it's the truth. And people that I've talked to, and it doesn't represent everyone, but people that I've talked to privately will express the normal response to these kinds of statements, the understanding of basic biology, physiology, right? Biology. But in public, they have to be so careful with their words. You know, when you work, for example, in an environment where it's quite liberal here in the West, for example, you have to be careful what you say and what you express. But this is what I mean. There is, for me, to be honest with you, I think that democracy is largely a bit of a sham, to be honest with you, and that free speech is being eroded away. It feels like we're heading towards this kind of 1984 Orwellian kind of future, this kind of, I don't know what it's going to become, you know, where you have that. I mean, you know, it's difficult for me to recommend a book, but 1984 is actually a pretty good book because it's almost laying out the groundwork for how we end up in this ridiculous environment. And, you know, before you know it, there's going to be such a thing as thought crime, you know. It's insane. And it's just incredible to see the response here. And I understand what Sharon Davies is saying because she's also coming off the back of the infiltration of transgender athletes, specifically because it can't work the other way, specifically into women's competition. Because you won't find biologically born female athletes in male competition. You won't see it, and you don't see it. But you do see it the other way. And those records that women have held are being absolutely smashed by these male competitors, whether or not they've had hormone therapy or surgery or whatever it is, but they're getting smashed. And I've seen news articles, this was a little while ago, where there was a US athlete who was mediocre at best as a man, but the second he, quote, transitioned over to female competition, smashed the records and went to, you know, first, second or third place or whatever it was. Of course, he has a huge advantage. You know, and what bothers me as well, and what should really bother women watching this, is that women have had to work hard to get to this point, you know, where there's women's field and track events and all other types of competition that women like to, you know, do and earn that right to, you know, get first place, second or third or whatever it is. There's been a lot of struggle and suffering to get to those things, right? And what do you find now with this, you know, liberalism, that it's all been for nothing? You know, the suffragette movement has really been for nothing because it's gone way, way too far. And then you find it just extending into other areas. It's just a complete disaster. And it makes you wonder, where is this going to end? You know, are you ever going to be able to say anything? You know, it says here, for example, next year's Tokyo Olympics is likely to include trans competitors under new rules. You know, I mean, if I was a female competitor, I would just walk out. You know, surely if there's going to be transgender athletes, surely they should compete within their own bracket, right? But you'll find that they'll be competing in women's, you know, and again, you don't see it the other way around. And I wonder why, right? And I think it's an affront to women, and I think it's just terrible. But I just find it absolutely stunning. In some ways, I don't, actually, that, you know, someone making basic statements about, you know, biological fact is being labelled transphobic, homophobic and sexist. But that's what people throw around now, right? They throw around those terms. Oh, you're homophobic, you're, you know, you're this, you're that. And they just throw them around without actually asking you, without actually providing you with the facts, you know, and without, you know, explaining it properly. So it's just, you know, it's crazy when I read stuff like this and consider where it is we're actually going. It makes you wonder what we're going to be like, assuming we don't get caught up within 10 years or 20 years. Where are we going to be? You know, what are people going to, quote, look like, and how are they going to act? And are you going to be able to express your opinion at all, you know? Interesting, right? But facts are facts. I mean, you can't go changing the Bible. Well, the new versions do, of course, but, you know, King James Bible, that will give you the truth. And, you know, talking of that as well, just a side topic, I've encountered 2 sets of Jehovah's Witnesses, actually, last week. One came to the door of my home, and another one I exchanged messages with on LinkedIn, which is a professional website, you know, if you're working. And straight in the door, they don't ask you whether you want to have that conversation, but they throw it at you. But I know how to, you know, return that conversation, because with the JWs, as with everyone, all these other, quote, Christian denominations, they want to be connected to you somehow. And it's very, very, very easy to break that connection. It's like, Muslims try and say, well, we worship the same God. Well, no, we don't. And it often comes back as to who Jesus Christ is. And when I say to Jehovah's Witnesses, I say, oh, so you believe that Jesus Christ is God manifested in the flesh? They shake their heads. So I say to them, so we're not the same then? Do you believe in the Trinity, or the Godhead as the scripture calls it? And they will shake their heads. We're not the same then. I don't know who you worship, but it's not the same Jesus as I worship. It's not the same gospel that I have. It's another gospel, another Jesus. And you find this with everyone. It's usually just a couple of key questions, because what they want to do is find any common ground to connect to you in order to just, give you this, this thing and try and convert you into their religious system and so on. And it's always like that. So I can usually tear them down pretty quickly. The same with the NWT, the New World Translation, which is the one that the Jehovah's Witnesses use. And I started talking about that briefly. And the same with the messaging on LinkedIn. I started to explain, it's like, well, your verse says this, because this person was quoting verses to me. And I said, well, actually, it doesn't say that. It says this. I was explaining to them, you've got a broken translation. It's not accurate at all. It's from a different manuscript line, and you can prove this. And a lot of the early Bible verse videos I did covered that topic, and it's just incredible. It's like there's clearly some sort of activity going on with the Jehovah's Witness, some sort of push. But this is the thing with those guys; it's a very corporate organization. You've got to be out, and you've got to be doing this, and you've got to push the message and get the watchtower thing out there to people, and you've got to do it. Because they're concerned, as far as I understand, with establishing the kingdom now, here, which is not going to happen, So I always push it back, and again, sin is something they don't like talking about. I remember talking to the two JWs that came to my door, and I started talking to them about sin. They don't like it. They really don't like to talk about it. So it's your opportunity. If people come to your door, ask them. And explain those differences. And if you're not confident, this is the other thing, brethren. I think sometimes, we need to be ready to give an answer. Scripture says that. So I encourage you to do that. But pick on these couple of questions. Don't get drawn into, trying to find common ground with these people, because there is none. But show them how different you really are. Because a lot of people, you think when you deal with the JWs or the Pentecostals or this thing or that thing, that you've got to really understand that system. The scripture says in Romans 16:19, we have to be simple concerning the evil. Just know the very basics. Don't spend hours researching each religious system and going, okay, I understand this, that, and this, and that. Focus on the key points. And one of the things for me always is who Jesus Christ is. And that's fundamental. Because, as I said, the Muslims will say, well, we believe in Jesus. Yeah, but it's not the same. It's not the same. So when you show that, suddenly you can see it. You can see it in their eyes, and I can see it in the JW's eyes when I was talking to him. You can see that sudden realization that actually we're two different groups of people, you see? So, that was quite interesting. I quite enjoyed that. And something else I picked up on, by the way, and just to finish this video, on the way here from the airport here in Dublin to the office, about a 35-minute drive. Took a bit longer because there was quite a bit of traffic earlier. But the driver of the car that I was using, the taxi, Muslim guy, and, wait a second, no, got it wrong. It's a driver from my home to the airport in the UK, sorry. When we were driving, I noticed he had something hanging from his rearview mirror, and it looked exactly like a Catholic rosary, but it was all it was like a cut, I don't know what it was like a crystal or an obsidian or some sort of strange, metal or something. And it looked exactly like a Catholic rosary. And I was really unsure what this guy was. I thought, actually, is he like a Hindu? Is he, I wasn't too sure because I'd never seen it before. And I asked him about it, and it became immediately clear to me he was a Muslim. And he explained to me when he turns these little beads on there, it's like it equals one prayer or something. And it showed me just how fundamentally similar Islam is in many ways to Catholicism. But if you've done your research, and I encourage you to keep it low level, you don't need to go too deep into this. You'll know that Islam is one of the daughters of Catholicism, one of the many daughters. But it was a real stark reminder just how similar it really is. And a lot of people don't really understand or appreciate that, just how similar the two religious systems are. And again, I encourage you to take a look at it, but keep it a surface level research, because as with all things, brethren, much study, there's a weariness of flesh, it says in Ecclesiastes 12, right? You've got to be careful how much you do, because if sometimes you go down these rabbit holes, you just disappear. And I've seen channels and ministries just devote their entire time to certain things, and that's not really wise, so keep that a surface level study. But yeah, really kind of opened my eye to it as well. But again, I mean, I was talking about the driver here originally, Muslim also, and I got talking to him about a few things. And what I try and do is I try and understand a bit about what they do, what they believe. And it's interesting, I come across quite orthodox Muslims at times driving, and then I come across people who really say they are, just from a cultural perspective. It's almost like churchianity in the UK, right, where people would tick, yeah, I'm a Christian, but they certainly haven't been born again, and certainly have no concept of anything to do with it. They just believe that they should do that. And I've seen that as well in Muslims. I see that in many religious systems, But it was interesting to sort of come across that. And again, I spend time trying to understand people when, and it's not that I don't ever talk about who I am and the gospel and that kind of thing. But, this goes back to another point I wanted to talk about in this video, just briefly, is that, about evangelism generally. And evangelism is a very personal thing. And, what I kind of get bothered about in some ways, because I know that in the scripture it talks about the man formerly known as Legion. He went out and published how great things Jesus had done for him. So there is an aspect of proclaiming what the Lord has done for you. But for the most part, evangelism is a very personal thing. It's a husband that will try and save his wife, right? 1 Corinthians chapter 7, and vice versa. The wife will try and save her husband. And you find that parents and their children, they try and raise them and ultimately see them saved. Friends will see friends saved, right? And it's generally at that level, or people that you might work with. And this is the thing, and this is why you need to be careful how you approach the topic of salvation. And also your example, brethren, makes all the difference. It really does. And this is why we have to keep our tongues in check, why we have to keep our behavior in check, why we have to keep our attitude in check. And you always have to assume that somebody is watching you. I've preached on this before, I think in the Philippines, but somebody's watching you. You're at work and maybe you don't even realize it, tapping away on your keyboard, or you're cutting down some wood, or whatever it is that you do for a living. You need to be mindful of the fact that somebody's watching you. Someone's listening to your words. And whether you know what it is to be a Christian or not, they have a certain notion of what it is to be a Christian, And when they see you acting contrary to what they think a Christian should be doing, you need to be ready to answer that, and to ultimately give an answer for the hope that lieth within you, right? You need to be mindful of that. So sometimes when I'm corresponding with Christians, or when I talk to Christians, it's something I try and remind them of. Be careful of getting angry, or reflecting Christ in the wrong way. Be friendly, be approachable, be meek, be gentle, be apt to teach. You know what I mean? Be respectful, right? Help people out, do the right thing, and so on. Be honest, and the list continues, right? But what you find is kind of contrary, when I come across some of these people, for example, on YouTube, and I watch how it is that they interact with the camera, admittedly, and it surprises me sometimes, because I don't think they realise that anyone can click on these videos. Anyone at all can click on it. A lost person just idly browsing can click on the video, and they need to immediately see something that's different about you and go, and be intrigued by that, right? It talks about the I think it's in 1 Peter somewhere. Forgive me, I'm not 100% sure, but it talks about the women winning their husbands by their conversation, We need to persuade people, knowing the terror of the Lord. You know, the way that you talk, the way that you act is so important. And this is why in my interactions, wherever I am, whether I'm, in the office here in Dublin, or in a taxi going somewhere, or, I'm in the grocery somewhere in the UK, wherever I am, I try to be mindful of how it is that I project to other people, because you don't know, brethren, what conversations you're going to get drawn into, what people are going to ask you, what situation will suddenly arise next to you. You don't know. You don't know. You can't predict that. So you need to be building up this good report. It talks about having a good report of those that are without, the lost, the unsaved, right? And how are you going to have a good report if you're, hasty to be angry? You use cuss words, right? It's obvious that you're angry, and so on and so forth, right? You're barely able to control yourself. All of those things make a huge difference. So, something I wanted to kind of remind us about on the end part of this video. But a few things. I mean, this thing, I'll try and put a link, and I'll try and make sure it's a safe link, because the one I'm looking at maybe is not 100% appropriate, but I was looking at any article. And you probably could yourself, actually. Sharon Davis, it's Sharon with 2 R's, and Davies, I think it is, Davies, Davies, and you could probably find a number of articles that you go into. So that's it, really. So I just wanted to record a short video. Thank you for spending the time watching this. I'd like to know your thoughts, your opinions, while we can still express them, right? Let me know your thoughts. If you want to email me, my address is BibleBelieverUK@gmail.com. Thank you for watching. God bless and Godspeed. Thank you.